Good evening. My name is Denise Lucy. I am professor and executive director of Dominican University of California's Institute for Leadership Studies in Marin County. And I am proud to welcome you to the 2021 Leadership Lecture Series. And for many years, Book Passage, which is the San Francisco Bay Area's prized independent bookstore, has invited Dominican to be partners. Together, we've welcomed 136 world-class change-leading authors to our campus and the community. And because of the great support by Bank of Marin, our lecture sponsor, we can host this event tonight with Book Passage. For 30 years, Bank of Marin has been a leading business and community bank in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I want to thank you, Bank of Marin, for your continuing support of this really robust community program. Elaine Petruccelli is president of Book Passage, and she will be telling you about our upcoming lectures after tonight's presentation. Our distinguished speaker tonight is the critically acclaimed Chilean-American author, Isabel Allende. Her best-selling books include The House of the Spirits, Of Love and Shadows, Paula, A Long Petal of the Sea, just to name a few. Her books have been translated into more than 42 languages. She is the best-selling Spanish language writer in the world. Ms. Allende was awarded the Medal of Freedom by President Barack Obama. Through the Isabel Allende Foundation, she supports nonprofits in Chile and California that provide vulnerable women and children access to healthcare, education, protection from violence, and reproductive self-determination. Tonight, Ms. Allende will be discussing her important feminist memoir, The Soul of a Woman. She will be in conversation with Ms. Alicia Garza, principal at the Black Futures Lab. Ms. Garza is also host of the podcast, Lady Don't Take No. She's co-creator of the Black Lives Matter Global Network and author of the book, The Purpose of Power. How we come together when we fall apart. What a wonderful title. Please join me in welcoming Isabel Allende and Alicia Garza.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lucy. And it is absolutely my incredible honor to be here with one of my sheroes and one of my favorite authors, Isabel Allende. Isabel, how are you tonight?
I am thrilled to talk to you. I just read your book.
Oh, my goodness.
And I found so many things in that book that are like copied from mine.
Oh my
because
God.
I see that what you are doing is like, it connects to feminism in so many ways that I was thrilled to read your book.
Thank you so much. Wow. Okay. I was not expecting that. That is, check on my bucket list here. You are absolutely incredible. And I'm so excited to be in conversation with you tonight. And I want to talk about all the things. I mean, you have written a canon, honestly. You have absolutely written a canon, and people know that I have said that for me, writing a book felt like birthing a child, right? It's such an emotional and vulnerable process. You've written more than 24 books, and I'm so excited that you are continuing to write because we need your voice in the world. I want to ask you, just to start off, talk to us a little bit about your writing process and where did this book come out of for you?
Let's start by the second part.
Okay.
The book wasn't my idea. I gave a speech some time ago in Mexico City for a women's conference, and it went viral. And so my publishers in Spain decided to publish it somehow.
Wow.
I read it and it was so dated, completely stale, because in a few months, a lot had happened. The Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, protests in the streets, women rising everywhere. And I said, no, this cannot be published. But then I started thinking about my own trajectory as a woman and as a feminist, because I've been a feminist since I was 5 years old,
Wow.
although the word had not arrived in Chile yet.
Uh-huh.
And then this book just came out so easy because I had everything inside. It was just my life experience and the extraordinary women that have helped me in my journey.
Oh, I love that. And what's your process for writing? I mean, like I said, for me, writing, I mean, there's something about it that is like a spiritual process. But then, of course, we all have our habits, right? For me, I love writing in the beginning of the dawn, right? I like it when everything's quiet, but there's still so much possibility. People are waking up, but the world hasn't started yet. Tell us a little bit, like, take us inside. How do how is it that you start to create, even though I know this was a speech for you that you decided to turn into a book? What was your process of moving it from that talk into what we're reading today?
I'm very disciplined, Alicia, very disciplined. So I start all my books on January 8th, out of superstition and discipline, because my life is complicated. And if I didn't have a day to start, I would be procrastinating forever. With a day to start, everybody around me knows that January 8th, I'm not available anymore. And that has helped me a lot to be able to write all these books. But also, I'm old, so I don't have much of a life, not like you. So
Oh.
I can spend a lot of time writing. There's not many distractions. And this book, I wrote it, I started on January 8th last year, but I started simultaneously a novel. I wanted to have both projects. And I finished this book around May, and then I worked on the novel and I finished it in December. So I have last year, because of the pandemic, I was able to write 2 books. How did you take the pandemic?
The pandemic has been rough, and you can hear my pandemic puppy is going
Oh.
ballistic.
What kind of puppy is that?
He's an American bully, and I think he's waiting for his papa. So he must sense him somewhere. I'm sorry for the noise, but for me, the pandemic has been, I mean, it's been awful in a lot of ways because there's so much suffering, and the suffering is preventable. That's the thing that, hurts me. I know that, I have a roof over my head. I have food. I can feed this rambunctious puppy. But there are so many more people who are living on the streets who don't have the things that they need to live well. And, I saw a statistic the other day that said that women have been the primary people who are losing jobs and who are being impacted and attacked really by these multiple crises. Tell us a little bit. I mean, you have said that you've been a feminist since you were 5 years old. Talk to us a little bit about, how your vision of feminism was shaped, and talk to us a little bit about how it's changed and how that comes through in the book.
May I suggest something, Alicia? Call the puppy.
Oh, I have called him. He's literally running
and
in a
sit him
circle.
on your lap. He'll be quiet.
Yeah, I'll grab him.
Look, and I love puppies, by the way, much more than I like people. I come from a weird, dysfunctional early childhood. My father abandoned my mother when I wasn't even 3 years old. And my mother was ready to give birth to my youngest brother. So she was married 4 years, had 3 kids before the pill. And then my mother was practically forced to go back to live with her father in Chile in a household of males, my grandfather and my bachelor uncles. And my mother was very vulnerable, very, how can I say, she was a charity case in that house. She had no money of her own, no resources. She couldn't work because she had not been trained or educated for work. She was a señorita of that time. This was in the 40s in Chile, in a social class where women didn't work, very Catholic, conservative. So she had everything against her. And I was aware very early on that that my mother's life was very limited, while the lives of the males in the family were not. And I have to include in this the fact that we had maids at home, at least 2 or 3, depending on the time, plus another poor woman who would come to wash clothes. And those people lived miserable lives. They were the nannies that brought us up, and they lived in the backyard in real cells. I could see how unfair all this was. And it made me angry, terribly angry, to the point that they thought that I was mentally ill or something. That's my puppy. But my husband will beat her.
Like we're having the same affliction.
Yeah, I know. So finally, my mother, after many years, remarried, and my stepfather eventually became my best friend and a real father for me. I really loved him, but he was such a male chauvinist, authoritarian, patriarchal, used to be served by the women in the house.
Yeah.
He wouldn't get up to get a glass of water. He would do like this, and somebody would run to bring him the glass of water.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another time and another place, I know. But that's how I grew up. And I grew up angry about that.
Mm-hmm.
By puberty, let's say early adolescence, I realized that I was not a lunatic. There was a movement out there called the women's movement that had not arrived in Chile.
Yeah.
We had never heard something like that, but I read it in a magazine or somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And later, when I was in my early 20s, I read a book by Germaine Greer, The Female Eunuch.
Mm.
And that book was like opening a door to something fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me ideas, an articulate language to express the anger I had. It had humor. It was intelligent.
Mm.
And I think that book was the beginning of a more targeted anger that finally led me to become a feminist journalist.
Mm. I
By
love.
the way, Alicia, I was a terrible journalist, a lousy journalist. I couldn't stick to the truth. I would have been great today, but then it didn't work.
I find so much resonance in all of the things you just said. You know, I grew up in a similar way, in the sense that, you know, I became very angry about the way that women were treated in this world. And a lot of my kind of first notions of that were in my home, and getting very insolent, if you will, when I was being told I had to do things because I was the girl child, being told I needed to go get my dad a cup of coffee. And I remember being, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old and saying, get it yourself.
Get it yourself. Yeah. I read that in your book and I totally related to it.
And I think for a lot of women internationally, I think that the way that we come to know ourselves in the world is by knowing what we're not. And that either comes from a kind of perspective of people telling us what we can and can't do, or it comes from a perspective of us ourselves knowing that power has been stripped from us, and we spend a lifetime trying to reclaim that power. Talk with us a little bit about, you know, how have you used feminism to reclaim your power? And what advice would you give, you know, at this stage in your life, right? You've been a feminist your whole life. And I know when I, you know, was just coming into feminism, I was an angry feminist. Is that true for you? Are you still angry? And talk to us about your trajectory around feminism. What is feminism for you now?
Look, anger is really important.
Mhm.
Anger fuels all revolutions, all movements that are important to push history come from people being angry.
Mhm.
Angry at something that is basically unfair,
That's right.
anger at violence, at exploitation.
That's right.
So when I read in your book, when you ask, what do we want for the future?
Mhm.
I've been asking that all my life. What do I want for the future?
Mhm.
And I have to start by defining what patriarchy is.
Yep.
Patriarchy is a system, a global system
Mhm.
that gives dominance and supremacy to the male gender
Mhm.
over women, nature, other species, and other men who
Mm.
are also victims of the patriarchy.
That's right.
And what is feminism? Feminism is an uprising against that system. And for me, it has always been against the system, not against men, because I think men have to be our allies,
Mhm.
not the old guys, they have to die off. But
Yeah.
but our children and our grandchildren
Yeah.
that have been raised by women like us, they are our great allies.
Mhm.
And there's another thing in your book that to me was open like another level. Feminism is part of the patriarchy as racism is,
Mm.
as homophobia is,
Mhm.
as poverty,
Mm.
and all the ways in which the system divides us.
Mhm.
Because how do they keep control and power? By making us powerless.
Yeah,
And us is a lot of people, is the great majority in the world.
that's right.
And so when these people, these movements connect and start working together, I am fascinated. When I see for example, in Chile, there was a huge uprising in October of 2019.
Mhm.
And it started because they raised the price of the subway. It
Mhm.
was like nothing, like 3 cents.
Yeah.
And people, in 24 hours, you had 1 million people in the streets.
Mm.
Who were protesting and why were they protesting? There were no leaders, no political parties,
Mhm.
women,
Mm.
gay people,
Yep.
poor people, the students, the teachers, the nurses.
Mhm.
Everybody was out there finding ways of communicating their anger at a system that wasn't working for them.
That's right. That's
And
right.
so I feel that if we could really, if feminism could connect basically and profoundly with
Mhm.
all these other movements, we would really challenge the patriarchy
That's
in
right.
ways that would be incredible.
That's right. You know, I'm so struck by your definition of patriarchy and how it includes not just um, unfair domination over each other, but also the planet. And you know as well as I do that we have come out of one of the strangest political moments in this country in my lifetime. And I call it strange because there was so much terrible about it, but it also was actually bizarre in a lot of ways.
It was crazy,
You
totally
know,
crazy.
so weird. Like, we have had really bad leaders in this country. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say, Donald Trump was the worst leader this country's ever had, but he definitely was one of the strangest, just in the sense of a lack of connection of logic. I mean, I feel like the bad leaders of the past, at least you understood what their logic was. You just disagreed with it, right? We knew that logic was deadly for so many people, but it was a logic. It just wasn't a lot of our logic. This leader has come with the depth of conspiracy theories, the deepening of divisions in this country, the sharpening of those divisions. and really the kind of catastrophic catapulting toward nihilism in a way that I have not seen in my lifetime. And I'm 40 years old. You are no stranger to very tense political conditions. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about feeling, you describe yourself as saying that you feel like you've been a foreigner all your life. Can you talk with us a little bit about what it was like to flee Chile, what it was like to immigrate to the United States, and then this past 4 years, what has that been like for you, knowing that, you know, I think for so many people, the United States is like a bastion of hope, right, and opportunity. And this is in the last 4 years and really 10. I mean, we've started to put people and babies in cages, separating families. I mean, the depths that this country has gone to are unbelievable. So I'm just curious to kind of hear your perspective. How are you grappling with this moment that we're in right now? Do you still feel like a foreigner? Do you see any relationship between what you left in Chile and what we've just gone through here in the US?
You know, when I say that I have been a foreigner all my life, is because I wasn't even born in Chile. I ended up there because my father abandoned my mother. Then my mother married a diplomat. So all my childhood and adolescence, I was traveling.
Yeah.
Then finally, I was in Chile. I got married. I had 2 kids. I thought I was going to live forever in that little house.
Yep.
And then we had the military coup.
Yep.
And in 24 hours, the country I had known disappeared and was replaced by something else. People who have not experienced a military coup have no idea what it is. We didn't, because we had the longest and most solid democracy in the continent.
Yeah.
And after some time, a few months, I was forced to leave my country, and I ended up living as a political refugee in Venezuela.
Yeah.
Never unpacking with the idea that I would go back any moment, because no one expected the dictatorship to last 17 years. In those 17 years, a lot happened. My kids grew up, my marriage collapsed, really, and I became a writer out of need, probably, because I felt so frustrated and so lonely and so desperate.
Yeah.
And writing really saved me. And then when maybe we were close to the end of the dictatorship, although we didn't know that, I came to the United States on a book tour, fell in lust with a guy, and moved to the United States without an invitation. And moved to his house. Not a good idea. And I remember that in the first week, I said, Willie, this is a very fascist country. And Willie said, what are you talking about? This is the cradle of democracy. And I said, wait a minute. You are thinking of the ideal of the American dream, of what is projected, the myth. But the reality is that half of the population in this country is very conservative, nationalist. They have this feeling that they are superior to the rest of the world. They have been always at war, and half of the population is armed with weapons of war. So this is very explosive, and any minute you will have a surprise. Well, decades happened. And then when Trump was elected, I was horrified, I have to admit. And then when we had the insurrection on January 6th, many people called me that day saying, is this like what you experienced in Chile? And I said, no, because what we experienced in Chile was an uprising of the military. It is as if the Pentagon would have decided to take out the president, bomb the White House, eliminate Congress, political parties, censorship for everything, no habeas corpus, so anybody can be arrested and you will maybe disappear and you will never know what happened. So the situation is different, but potentially it can happen. And I keep repeating it. Democracy is always fragile because it's a system of consensus. So it is always fragile. We have to be very alert, very vigilant to protect it, if that's what we want. I lost you, Alicia.
I am so sorry.
Your doggy?
This is unbelievable.
What happened?
There's so much chaos happening. There was a wrong delivery. My dog's going crazy. You know, I'm thinking a lot about how it is that we, as women, have always had to be steady in the midst of chaos. Kind of like what is going on here. I want to ask you, in relationship to your book, you talk a lot about the important women in your life who I know have probably been stalwarts for you, pillars at times of crisis, of chaos, of uncertainty. Can you talk with us a little bit about who those women are? That's one question. The second question that I have for you is, you know, in your description of feminism and the kind of world that we need to build and how we use anger, you say that it is important for us to understand that it's necessary to be angry at systems, but that people, right, are being shaped by systems and certainly can be shaped differently, and men in particular. Who are some of the important feminist men in your life that have also been pillars for you in moments of uncertainty, of chaos, and of deep change?
I can name one immediately, my son, Nicolas. My son was raised by me, and whatever I missed, my daughter, Paula, instilled in him. So he was raised by two really strong women. And he is the least male chauvinistic male that I have ever encountered, to the point that he and his wife, Lori Barra, run the foundation. And my foundation's mission is to empower women and girls. So his job is exactly what we want men to do. And of course, they don't. But my son has been my pillar. I have to name three people, three men, because women, the list is immense, very long. But three men. My grandfather, who taught me, he raised me in a stoic way, you know, rough. And I was supposed to be, I mean, the message was no whining, no complaining. Don't talk about your sentiments or your ailments or your desires because nobody cares. Really, perform. And you know what? It served me well. And I have his voice inside my head. And in every tough circumstance in my life, or any time that I've been confronted with tragedy, the voice of my father, of my grandfather, keeps me standing. And he gave me a backbone, and that backbone has been really useful. But now I'm 78 and it's time to relax, and I wish he wasn't talking to me so much. The other person that was really essential was my stepfather, who gave me exactly the opposite message. Life is good. Enjoy it. Be generous. Serve others. Dance, sing, be happy. Which it is very hard for me because the other voice is much stronger. And then my son. These three men, because of course I have had husbands, several, and lovers, a few, less than I would have liked to, but I have had some. And I have to say, I don't owe them anything.
Mm.
They didn't, they accompanied me in life for some time.
Mm.
But except for my first husband who gave me two wonderful children, I wouldn't say that they have not been obstacles, which is
Mhm.
good enough,
Okay.
maybe.
Okay. Fair,
Yeah.
fair enough. That's very, very honest. It strikes me that for a lot of us, I think there's maybe a handful of men that we can name in our lives that are feminist men. What do you think we need to do to shift that? What can men do who are watching right now who are like, how could I be a feminist man? What would be some tips that you would have? Because so many people think about feminism as like women who hate men, women who
Yeah.
are angry at men, and they think about feminist men, right? And this is also so sexist and patriarchal, but they think about feminist men as soft, right? As having too many feelings, right? And not being manly enough. So
Well,
let's
that, Alicia, that's
chat
because
that.
we live in a world in which masculine values are values and feminine values are not.
Mm.
So we think that, for example, let's talk about ambition. Ambition is great in a man. A woman who is ambitious is a bitch.
Mm.
Yeah, isn't it true? Yeah,
Yes, it's true.
a woman is allowed to cry and be soft because that's not important. But a man who's in touch with his sentiments, oh, he's soft and whatever, despised for many, because feminine values are despised.
Yeah.
So that needs to change. But how do we change it? Numbers, Alicia. We need a critical number of women who are aware of that, the fact that they live in this system and it needs to change. Now, what is wonderful is that when you see now women in the streets or Black Lives Matter, you see mixed generations, gender, social classes, everybody's together. And that is so wonderful because that's the beginning of of change.
Yeah.
As long as we are in our bubbles, as long as we are separated by the system in little enclaves,
Yeah.
we don't have power. Power comes in numbers.
That's right.
And the power needs to be political power also.
Yes. You know, I love talking about political power.
I know, but you know, I confront men all the time who tell me, no, now we have women in politics. Look at all the women who are prime ministers or presidents. They know the names because you can count them with two hands.
That's right.
That's not a critical number. You know, when I remember in the early 60s, when the pill arrived in Chile, everything changed because for the first time, women had control over their fertility, which meant that they could get out of the house and work and control the number of children they had. Yeah. So women went out to work and we would dress like men in suits with briefcases. Wow. And ties. I remember some of us with ties. Yep. And we acted like men to be taken seriously. But then there was a critical number of women in the workplace, and that was not necessary anymore. And you don't see women in suits with ties anymore, unless it's a fashion. Yeah. But that needs to happen in every one of these movements that you and I are promoting so much. We have to have a critical number and take over power. Nothing is given. You have to take it.
That's right. Well, I have to ask you, I mean, this is a great segue into talking about your nonprofit. So, first of all, when I saw the work that your foundation does, my heart swelled. You talked about domestic workers earlier, and you know, I've spent the last decade of my life organizing women who clean other people's homes, who care for other people's children while also caring for their own, women who care for the aging and the elderly and people who help support people who to have independence, who have disabilities. And women, in my opinion, maybe not so humble, are literally the glue that holds every society together. And so when I saw the work that your foundation does, like I said, my heart swelled. I was like, yes. Talk to me. What inspired you to start a foundation? I mean, you've written so many books. I imagine that writing takes up so much of your time. But talk to us about what inspired you to create this foundation, and talk to us a little bit about the work that your foundation is doing right now.
Well, I shouldn't get any credit. My daughter-in-law, Lori Barra, and my son, and Sarah, who works with us also, run the foundation. The mission of the foundation is to invest in the power of women and girls. And of course, we have limited resources because it's fed with my books. And so we have to target our mission very, very precisely. We invest in education because a woman needs to have education and skills in order to support herself. If you depend economically, there is no feminism. You have to have control over your body and your health. So health is very important. And you have to be protected. You cannot live in fear.
That's right.
And women live in fear.
That's right.
It's in our DNA to be vaguely afraid of all the things that are threatening. But sometimes the threat is real and it's terrible. That's so right. Women need to be protected from domestic violence, from rape. The bodies of women have become weapons of war.
That's right.
And all that the foundation does, we try to do it among the most vulnerable, people who are of high risk. And therefore we work for example, among immigrants, especially in the border. We support organizations that work now with minors that have come to this country and are in detention centers. And when they go to court, they have no representation. So you can see a 3-year-old from Guatemala in front of a judge in English. That's right. And supposedly that's a fair situation. There are 40,000 lawyers in this country, that women, most of them, that work pro bono to represent those kids. So that's the kind of stuff that we try to help economically. We don't do the work in the field. So that's what we do. And how did it start? It started with the death of my daughter. When Paula died, she died at 29. I wrote a book called Paula, and I decided to put aside whatever money would come from the book for the book, because it didn't belong to me, it belonged to Paula. I needed to use it to honor her. But after I wrote the book, I went into a sort of horrible void. I couldn't write anything. I felt dead inside. And my husband then, Willie, and my friend Tabra decided that they needed to get me out of my comfort zone, to wake me up. And we went to India, the three of us. And we, among many other things, a wonderful country, full of color and so different that it really, you can't be indifferent to anything in India. And then your problems seem minimal compared to what's happening in that environment. Yeah. And we rented a car with a driver, and we went in Rajasthan to some rural areas. And in the middle of nowhere, terribly hot, the engine of the car was too hot. And so we stopped to cool the engine, and we saw some women nearby under a tree. And Tabra and I walked to these women. There were, let's say, 6 women, very poor, with lots of little children, some of them naked. And there's no language because we couldn't talk, but women touch and women smile, and we have things in common. You kiss the kids, you pick up the kids. And my friend Tabra had purple hair, and so they were touching her hair. We had bought some bracelets in the market, and we gave them the bracelets. And then the driver honked, and it was time to go. So we were leaving, and one of the women came running, and she gave me this little package, this parcel of rags. And I thought she was trying to give me something for the bracelets. And I said, no, 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 it's not necessary. And she said, she didn't say anything, just pushed it and then went back. She didn't want to take it back. So I opened these rags, and inside was a newborn baby. The baby must have been a day old, not more, because the umbilical cord, raw umbilical cord, was still there. And so I kissed the baby, blessed the baby, I tried to give it back. She wouldn't take it. And so in that moment, the driver came running and took the baby from me and gave it to another woman. I don't know what happened with the baby. He gave it to them and pushed me in the car. And we were already driving away when I reacted. And I said, why would that woman give me her baby? And the guy said, it was a girl. Who wants a girl? And that gave me the clue of what I was going to do with the income that had come from the book and from what I would have with my future books. And so I created this foundation and started sending checks without any knowledge of how philanthropy works. But then at one point in my life, my son needed a bride. So I went out to look for a bride for my son. And I thought, I need someone who will make him happy, who will raise my grandkids, and who will run the foundation. And that was Rory. She did it perfectly. So that's how it happened.
That's incredible. That is an incredible story. Oh my goodness. I'm like, whoa. Okay. Let me ask you, you talk about aging in the book, and every 8 seconds in this country, somebody turns 65. And we have an aging crisis in this country where we don't have enough care. We don't have enough caregivers. We don't have enough supports for people who are aging. Do you think that aging is a feminist issue? And if so, how? Talk about that with us.
Exactly. It is a feminist issue. And I am so sorry that feminism has not tackled it. It should have been done 20 years ago, because now we are living much longer. And there is a growing population of older people, mostly women, because men die earlier, they don't take care of themselves, and women live longer. And so we have women that before, the grannies before, were taken care of by their families, with the extended family. That's not possible anymore.
That's right.
And you have very stressed people who have finished taking care of their kids and now have to take care of their parents. But there are no resources, no space, and we don't have the psychological, I would say, preparation for this. We are not prepared for this.
That's right.
This is something that we need to confront. But what we also need to confront is aging beautifully, which is something that women can do. Look at Jane Fonda in the Golden Globes. She's 82.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that everybody should look like Jane Fonda, but we can all have a life. And we become invisible too soon. Mm-hmm. Society pushes us away. It doesn't happen to men. You see horrible men, fat, ugly, smelly, who feel entitled to a woman 30 years younger. What are they thinking? Really? So aging becomes a problem, much more of a problem for women than for men. We have to fight against that too.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's very interesting. I have many people in my life who I love dearly, who are older than me. And I was having a conversation with a dear friend of mine just 2 days ago, actually, for my podcast. And she was saying something very similar to you. I asked her about the importance of relationships across generations. And I asked her, what do you think that my generation gets wrong about your generation? And she said, I think that people forget that we're still here. And she was saying that her experience of aging is that at a certain point, she's 73. She said at a certain point, people look right through you and you can be standing right next to them. And she also said that it was very specific to women. So I guess my question for you is, how do we rethink how we understand the importance of aging in this context? I think, in the United States, we throw people away 100%, right? And it struck me of what you said in relationship to Jane Fonda. She looks amazing because she has all the things that she needs to be able to live well. Exactly. And there are so many women who do not have that, not at my age, not younger than me, and certainly not older than me. So talk with us a little bit about some of the shifts that we can make to make sure that women have the things we need to live well and to age gracefully.
It's again a problem of the society. You talk about that when you talk about Black Lives Matter, that how come that healthcare it's not enough for everybody, that not everybody has the same healthcare, that if you get COVID being Black in a poor neighborhood or being someone in Hollywood, the care is completely different. So this is a structural problem of our society. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's very hard to tackle it individually. Yep. It's the system that is not working. But everything it works together to make women disposable and invisible. First of all, women are trained from childhood to be attractive. Why? Because in the reproductive market, that gives them value. And there's a moment after the reproductive years, when they are not even 50, when they become invisible because they are no longer in the market. That's right. Let's say. And you become invisible, not needed anymore. You moved aside. And the other thing is that if you don't have access to good health care, you cannot have a good old age. That's for sure. But there's also an element of community, that it's important to have purpose, to have a sense of belonging, that you might be invisible from a sexual point of view, but you are necessary, needed, important from many other aspects of life. We take care of grandchildren, we take care of each other, we have knowledge that young people don't. You are so young, Alicia, I hate you. I hate. When I think that you are 38 years younger than me, wow. You are going to do so much in the next 38 years, let me tell you. So prepare yourself.
That's an honor.
And you know what? You will be 78 one day and you will be still fighting.
Yes, that's my hope. That's my hope. Well, let me ask you this, because you brought it up, you were talking a little bit about passion and sexuality. I want to talk about this because
that's also a feminist issue.
It is a feminist issue.
Sexuality, because together with being invisible, it is assumed that you don't have any sexual needs. And if you do, it's a little ridiculous.
That's right. Well, can we talk about that a little bit? I mean, let's talk about passion. Let's talk about passion and aging. And you just got remarried very recently. So What have you learned about the role that love plays in a woman's life at different stages in her life?
You know what? I can't talk for everybody. I can talk for myself. I have had love all my life in different stages with different men, but I've always been loved. I have to be thankful for that.
Mhm.
And at 72, when I divorced for the second time, I thought, well, I'm not going to have a male partner again.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I am heterosexual. I wish I wasn't. Because women, well, really, women age much better and they are much more interesting. But unfortunately, as I said, I was raised heterosexual. And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to have a male partner. I bought a very small house
Mhm.
to live with my dog. Then my former husband died. I inherited his dog, so two dogs in a small
Okay.
house. And then this guy who heard me on NPR
Mhm.
started writing and eventually sold his house, gave away everything, and moved to California with two bikes and
Wow.
his clothes.
Wow.
The clothes were dated, so they were promptly discarded. And and we started living together. And then the pandemic hit.
Mm.
So now we are married in this extended honeymoon,
Wow.
locked indoors in this small house. And we are learning, we have learned a lot.
Mm.
We have learned things that we can extend to the community, to the world. We have learned patience,
Mm.
tolerance, good humor,
Mm.
to let go of the little shit
Yeah.
and really concentrate on what's essential, what is important. Be respectful, be kind. Kindness goes a long way.
Mhm.
And so when we talk about sex at my age, I hope that my son is not listening because if he is, he'll kill me.
He
But
better listen up.
he'll kill me. But there is sex at my age, of course there is.
Mhm.
Not as it was when I was your age, 40. But you replace energy with laughter, good humor, marijuana, all
Yeah.
that helps.
Yes.
And a glass of wine sometimes.
Yeah.
And there is, and sex becomes part of the many ways in which you love each other, in which you connect with the other person. Sex is the most intimate thing that you can have with another human being, except the relationship of the mother with a newborn baby.
Wow.
That's the only thing that can replace the intimate connection of sex. So it's too bad that it ends up being hydraulic, mechanics,
Yeah.
something that kids learn in porn
Yeah.
sites,
Yeah.
because it's much more than that.
Yeah.
And as you get older, it becomes much more than that also.
That's right. Well, you know, a dear friend of mine also told me that as you get older, your orgasms get much better.
Well, he's fortunate.
So I've got a couple more questions, and oh my gosh, I could talk to you forever. And just to warn
Well,
you,
we live close, so we'll get together and talk.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I was just gonna say, just to warn you, you and I are gonna become friends, my friend. So you write in the book, I want to light the torches of our daughters and granddaughters with mine. They will have to live for us as we lived for our mothers and carry on with the work we didn't have time to finish. What would you say to girls and young women about the work that you hope they carry forward?
The work is to replace the patriarchy. And it's a long haul, but it's possible.
That's
Because
right.
not always, patriarchy not always existed, not everywhere.
That's right.
And so it is possible to change it and replace it by a management of the world in which men and women share the administration of the world,
Mhm.
of the planet.
Mm.
Together we can create a world that is kind, a world that is sustainable, relationships that are inclusive, in which we can defeat together poverty, suffering. Most of the suffering we create as human beings. It's not in nature, we create it. War, ambition, competition, greed, all that we create. It's not in nature.
That's right.
And I would tell young women and young men, I would say that if I had any advice, get together, talk to each other. You cannot do anything alone. This is such a huge thing. Do it together, but do it happily, joyfully. You need the anger, because that's the fuel that keeps you going. But if you become depressed, somber, bitter, angry all the time, you don't have a life. And what kind of movement is that?
That's right.
You want to bring joy to the world. And so this is a way that we can continue with the struggle joyfully.
That's
If we
right.
do it together.
That's right. Okay, this is my last question. Otherwise, we're going to go until 8 o'clock. You know, I know you get this question a ton. You are known to start new projects every January 8th. That's 4 days after my birthday. Thank you very much. I know you're just putting this book out into the world, so I don't want to rush you, but is there any kind of sneak peek you can give us as to what we can expect from this year's project?
Look, last year I started two things. I started this book and I finished it by May. And I also started a novel and I finished it in December. So the novel is going to be published next year in February. I think the publishing date is February 22nd. And the title of the novel is Violeta. And it's a little bit like my first books, like this long epic saga, you know. I'm good at that. I like to do that because lots of characters, lots of, I love that. The more intricate, the better. And this year I started something else that I had to interrupt because of this publicity tour.
Yeah.
But I'm doing the publicity tour from home. I'm not doing book tours, traveling around.
That's right.
So I think that by the end of the year, it should be done.
I'm so excited about this.
What about you?
Oh, are you kidding? This book took like 10 years off my life. So it is what it is.
You need a day to start, Alicia.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. But the paperback is coming out this summer and we are updating the book and we're updating the cover. So stay tuned. You're gonna see.
Yeah, the cover is sort of weird, your cover.
It is kind of weird, but I liked it.
Yeah.
It was a weird moment and I wasn't sure where we were going to land. I think a lot of us thought we were going to be under Donald Trump's thumb for the foreseeable future. And so the cover is very eerie in that way because, you know, that's what the mood was. But now we're in a different moment. So we're going to change it up a little bit. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you so much, Isabel. It's been
thank you. Thank you. Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste. And thank you for your patience with my rambunctious dog.
Thank you both so much. And I know that the people who bought tickets already are getting a copy of Isabel's book, The Soul of a Woman. Whoops, you can't see it. And I bet you know about 100 more people who need it. And we have signed copies. So write to bookpassage.com or call us at Book Passage. We will get it to you. But if you have not seen Alicia's writing, oh my goodness, The Purpose of Power is, these two they have to be given to people as a pair. That's what I'm doing now. The subtitle, How We Come Together When We Fall Apart. I mean, this summer, everything was falling apart. And what you have done with Black Lives Matter and with your work, it's all in here. And I just as I read the two books, and I thought, both of these women were feminists in kindergarten. That's really fascinating. They've never met before tonight. And I think they're sisters. So I feel like I'm watching a great friendship start. It's very exciting. And I really want to thank Dominican for making these lectures possible as partnership with Book Passage, and to let you all know that Sharon Stone is coming on the 30th to be with Dominican, and her book is called The Beauty of Living Twice. I don't know what's in it yet, but I can't wait. And then on April 22nd, Heidi Kuhn, the founder of Roots of Peace, a Marin County housewife who yesterday won a huge award for her work stopping mines throughout the world. And her book, Breaking Ground, is one we're going to celebrate. Please do come to the Dominican website or the Book Passage website. And I just want to tell you that I feel so lucky that we are associated with Dominican. 66% of the students at Dominican identify as ethnically diverse. The 10 top schools in the country for best economic outcomes after college are 9 Ivy League schools in Dominican. So this is an amazing place where people are taught how they can change the world. And I am so proud that Book Passage can be part of it, and that our bank, Bank of Marin, our mutual bank, supports this. So thank you. And I come away from this determined to do even more than I thought I knew how to do. So this was so inspiring.